The tenor, Esteban Jose Zúñiga Calderón, hails from Cartago, Costa Rica, and he is a passionate performer and dedicated vocal instructor. He is praised for his high vocal range and stage expressiveness, and he has been carving a path in vocal music from Latin America to the United States. After finishing his college studies in Costa Rica, he earned a master's degree in vocal performance at the Manhattan School of Music, and later a doctorate in musical arts, with a specialization in historical performance practice at the University of Oregon. In the present day, Esteban is a member of the voice faculty at Willamette University and at Lynn Benton Community College. There, he continues working with young singers in development, helping them explore and discover their voices and refine their vocal technique. Esteban, tell me first of all, please tell me about three aspects in general that you can think about from your training in Costa Rica that you consider were fundamental for you before going to a different country.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that many of us Costa Rican singers and voice students, we all go through the same educational standards in Costa Rica, such as vocal technique, some piano training, some oral skills, and musical reading, and so on. There are lessons we all experience, but some specific ones opened many doors for me when I came to the US. Like Franklin Castro, whom I will always thank for teaching me this way. He taught me not just to sing plain notes and rhythms when preparing my songs, but to really dive into the song's text, its context, who wrote the music, and what was happening around that person at the moment of writing it. And that lesson marked me greatly as a singing student and eventually as a singer. It was invaluable to sit with a score and say, okay, yes, caro mio ben, credimi almen. But what is it that I am really saying? Why is this word being sung with this specific chord underneath? Why should I make this syllable sit for a longer time on this high note, but keep this other one short in this one low note? How far can I play with or even break the rules? How far can I really make this note just a little bit longer so that my text is stronger and clearer? So that teaching from Franklin Castro, the practice of really sitting down and dissecting and seasoning a song as much as possible, and doing so through knowledge, through research, helped me a lot, like a whole lot, a lot. A lot. Second, and this was a lesson from Amelia Barquero about, yes, male voices, or what we now call non-treble voices. The voices, I don't really know the translation to Spanish. What would we call these voice categories in Spanish? Because something I preach a lot nowadays is that the voice as an entity has no gender. That calling voices as male and female is confusing at the very least, because then what are countertenors or women with a voice deep enough to sing as tenor? What are they? So we should be really talking about treble clef voices versus bass clef voices. Let's call it that. Those bass clef voices, again, a lesson from Amelia Barquero was that for these voices, it doesn't all have to be sung in the chest voice register. That a voice can integrate all registers and work in a slightly more holistic way. I am sorry, I don't have a better word for it. That was definitely a huge and strong lesson that broke many preconceptions I had back in Costa Rica, and that I still had to battle the same preconceptions against many teachers, both in Costa Rica and the US, but it also opened many doors for me. I would not have developed my high notes the way I did if it weren't for the idea that only using the chest voice register for bass clef voices is to willingly waste a huge amount of vocal possibilities. And maybe third, let's see, what could be a third aspect of something that shaped me back in Costa Rica? Let me think. A bit, maybe. And I think I learned this from Doña Patricia Valverde. A bit, maybe, the fact of never arriving to your voice lesson unprepared. And it seems unbelievable that this is not a standard, one that we all just follow by default. But no, it is not. The fact of arriving to your lesson with a repertoire and having a repertoire given to me long ago, who knows if you've had it for weeks at this point, and arriving to your voice lesson with things half learned, This is practically the equivalent of wasting the singing teacher's time, the accompanist's time, and my own time as well. If I'm in Costa Rica, where education is state funded at the National University, at the University of Costa Rica, I'm also wasting taxpayers' money, wasting the country's money. Arriving to the US with that ethic that makes you say, I prepared things beforehand, I'm ready, let's make the most of the time we have, let's polish it. That also marked me a lot. And you'd think in the US people have that culture, but no, it depends a lot on the student, the singer, the university, the teacher. Not everyone follows that standard, but it's something that, if possible, should always be at the top of the list to arrive as prepared as possible, because eventually the professional world is like that. Eventually, in the professional world, you realize everything costs money. Arriving at a rehearsal where the rented space in the building costs money, the pianist who will be playing the rehearsal costs money, the piano, the person who tuned it up the night before, it all costs money. So arriving half prepared or even at 90% is disrespectful. So I think those were maybe the three main pillars I brought with me from Costa Rica: an integrated vocal cord, chest, head, the whole thing, to dive as deep as possible into a song and soak up with everything around it, and to always come prepared.
In, let's say, for example, in a routine, right? Like when you live in the routine of, I've spent my whole life living in Costa Rica and now, okay, you're in another country. So, how has the concept of being professional changed for you? What does it mean now to be a professional?
You know, it hasn't changed much. For me, being professional means I'm doing something and getting paid for it, period. So I don't think I'm necessarily more of a, well, okay, I do hold myself to a much different professional standard nowadays, and I move within a circle where irresponsibility is less tolerated and a certain professional attitude is much more expected. But I do not think that I am necessarily more of a professional nowadays than back in the day when I was gigging in Costa Rica, singing at a high school graduation, for example. To me, the meaning of being professional is simply you're doing something and you're getting paid to do it. And the ethics that come with it are all the same to me, regardless of what opera house you are singing at or what bar you are gigging at. To me, being professional really means if you're getting paid to provide a service, then that service subject to a standard of quality, and that standard of quality must be respected. So one of your original questions was, I think it was, when did I consider my vocal level to have reached a professional level? By that standard, my vocal level became professional the first day ever I was offered the equivalent to 10 US dollars to sing a mass in Costa Rica.
Nice. Okay. Now that you are in the United States, how are you handling this aspect? How do you handle the competition? How do you handle opportunities? From your perspective, because everyone lives differently, everybody has had different experiences. How have you managed this aspect? How?
You know, it's an approach that has definitely changed over the years. When I arrived in New York, I found myself in a place with so many opportunities, but also so many people fighting for the same opportunities. So, I don't know. For example, if they announce an audition for La Cenerentola and you sign up to participate and send your videos and all that jazz, you realize there's a long line of tenors. And all of them can sing the aria and they all have a high D's, literally all of them. So the competition issue becomes a bit like, well, okay, let's just throw our name in the hat and see if it comes out. It feels almost like a raffle sometimes. But I have also realized that the thing with competition is also that one must come to the realization that there is not only one thing to do as a singer, that there are opera auditions, that is a fact, but there are also churches, for example, which here in the US, they pay a much more considerable salary for singing. There are choirs that need soloists or singers to strengthen a section for an important concert. There's Baroque and early music that many don't perform, or new music, composers trying to launch an opera for the first time. And they need a singer who can learn the music quickly. And if not, then you go and get yourself a pianist and set up your own concert, charge a fee for entry, and rent a venue. Really, what seems the most important to me is realizing that competition as a singer sometimes boils down to having everybody fighting over the same opportunity when there's literally so much more to do out there. And I think the best way to handle this competitive market is to expand oneself and also diversify one's sources of professional income. If I dedicated myself solely and exclusively to doing a certain type of auditions, like only auditioning for opera houses, I would actively be missing out on this whole range of performing possibilities on the other hand. So I truly think competing in a singer's market is a bit about that. It is about seeing that there are so many things you can do and also having the versatility to do them. So that's helped me a lot. The other thing is that many of my opportunities, actually, some of my best opportunities haven't come through auditions. Many of my best opportunities came from doing something really well and then through word of mouth because someone told someone else who happened to know somebody that there was a tenor who could do this gig. And then suddenly I got another opportunity. And after doing that, if I did it very well, then someone told someone else who told their mother, who told their dentist, who gave them my email, and then I get an email about this other thing happening. So I haven't really had to go to auditions for a long time. Actually, I did only one last year because, again, many of my opportunities have come precisely from networking and expanding my list of contacts, from knowing someone who knows someone else, and doing something well from which another opportunity comes, then performing well at that one from which another one springs, and so on. So sometimes the real issue with competition is not necessarily who is the best singer, but it's actually about who knows someone who is a singer with a good reputation, who is able to come and do this one gig.
Yes, doing the work that needs to be done and do it well, but also work on our professional relationships. That is extremely important.
Every gig that comes out is always a chance to meet new people. Like whenever I get something, I always try to chat with everyone, grab everyone's Instagram, then we all follow one another, and eventually something always comes up every time. This year, for example, I have two gigs, like one of which came through someone I sang with back in 2021.
Wow.
So it turned out there was a gig to sing music written by Rossini, and this person, a soprano I sang with back in 2021, she said, "Hey, there's a tenor in Eugene who sings Rossini's music. You honestly never know. You plant seeds and you never know when they'll sprout, or if they will even sprout at all." Many of these opportunities truly came from people I met only once, or that we briefly chatted at some point, or from a business card that I probably left somewhere, and suddenly something came up out of it. So honestly, the truth is that social skills and being able to reach out, expanding one's contacts list, talking to people, and networking, all of this is crucial in the competitive scenes, I'd say. Many people are amazing, excellent singers with great voices, but if they lack social skills, it's tough.
Is this conversation inspiring you? Is it motivating you? Is it stimulating your brain? Then remember to share the video, like and subscribe to the channel. Let's continue. Regarding everything, every experience you have had to face, which in some way or another, all of us who go to an audition or those who apply for a job or simply for just for being alive, that in some way we will have to experience. What I mean is, if you've had any challenge, any obstacle that you had to face, specifically for the fact that you are a foreign singer.
Well, look, yes, several. Maybe to me it has not been as hard as it's been to some people I know, but I definitely have faced some challenges in that regard. Starting when I came to do my master's, it's curious because in Costa Rica, they sometimes talk to you a lot about racism existing, about people discriminating against others for skin color and other factors. But in Costa Rica, I did not experience it myself. It is not until it's you who is the foreigner that you actually start to say, ouch, that hurt. Or ouch, this little pinch, this little comment affected me more than I thought. My first bitter taste, my first bad experience with the whole being a foreigner, with that kind of thing. It was during my first ever English diction class. Back when I went to get my master's degree at the Manhattan School of Music, we had to do a diction and phonetics test on the day of auditions. So they gave you some texts. Some of them were in French, others in German, Italian, and so on. And you had to do the International Phonetic Alphabet, the whole phonetic transcription for those texts. And there was one that was in English. So with what I knew of IP, I sat down and did the transcription. So apparently I did well enough to be put in the advanced English diction class. So I attend, and we are all doing the first diction exercise. The teacher talks to me and asks if I can pronounce this specific word. So I pronounce it, and then she says, but you have a Latin American accent, so let's not ask you for now, right? And I was left like, okay. Just like that, they simply skipped me and continued with all the other native English speaking students. There were only about 3 of us who weren't native English speakers in the class. After that, one of the questions she asked each of us was what previous experience we had in English diction. So, when it was my turn to answer, I simply said, I have no experience in English diction. I do speak the language. I have general diction experience, but I never specifically learned English diction before. And next thing, she immediately takes out the exams, the tests that we all did on auditions day, and started looking for my test in front of everyone. And then she said, but it seems like you did very well. So why are you here? Shouldn't you be in the beginners class? Well, let's give it a few days and see how it goes, shall we? That day, Giovanna, it might seem like a simple experience, but that day I went straight into the bathroom and locked myself in to cry. And I never thought it would hit me so hard. I never thought it would hit me so hard because for the first time in my whole life, I was singled out from the class as the other. The one exception to the rule. After that, little things here and there, that, as I said, when they say these things to you, initially they don't seem offensive at all, but every time someone asks, where are you from? Where are you from? Oh, what a nice accent. Where do you come from? Each little pinch like that, each little comment affects you little by little. And I remember also there was one time I had to do an opera, La Cenerentola, since I was talking about La Cenerentola earlier, with a company that received some kind of grant, some government funding. They got government money only if they did their own English translation of the Italian text. So I had to learn La Cenerentola, which is traditionally done in Italian, but I had to learn it in English. There were parts, if you listen to any Rossini song, Rossini is super fast. Rossini is pure speed, and there were parts where this bunch of syllables in English was basically unpronounceable, which would have been delightful to pronounce in Italian. So I spent hours and hours putting each of those syllables in my mouth, which for the American singers in this production, all of which were native speakers of English, this went very well while doing this Cenerentola. It was a bit difficult, but I did it. So one day during a rehearsal with the pianist, she told me, Esteban, I want to take a moment to congratulate you. I want to congratulate you because for you to play the role of Prince Ramiro in this production, it is very clear that you have worked really hard on sounding like an American. And I was left thinking, no, Prince Ramiro, first of all, this is in an Italian opera and Ramiro happens to be from Spain. Ramiro isn't supposed to sound like he is American, and yes, I definitely have been trying to pronounce my English really well, but I never intended for Ramiro to sound like he was from the United States. So this experience made me think a lot about this idea of, well done, Esteban. Let's applaud you for making the effort to sound like an American in an opera that just so happens to have a plot which has nothing to do with the United States. It is true there are certain situations and certain issues within the very culture of opera, many of which happen to be inherently racist, or they happen to appropriate of certain cultures without the ethics needed for these types of situations. So little by little, these situations need to be resolved and they need to be discussed so that eventually we reach a level where there is a much higher respect for all the different cultures and much less interest in whether you look more or less white, little by little.
And truly, thank you so much for sharing with such sincerity and literally, like, for describing what all these things that happened to you, because it really is painful and it truly is unfair. And there are many different situations in all guilds and fields that it is just as you say, they need to be talked about. And this is something very interesting for people to keep in mind when someone is planning to move or travel or simply to be at a place where somehow they might be, in the eyes of other people, somehow physically different, disregarding how competent they may actually be. So, truly, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Thanks to you for the space.
And actually, there's a point I really like to talk about. And we're almost finishing up too with the questions. And it's about the mental aspect, the singer's mental health. Because, yes, we always are talking quite a lot of talk about good habits and vocal hygiene voice. We talk about study habits a lot. We talk about everything that needs to be done, about how to prepare for auditions, which, yes, it is super important. These are all skills we need to acquire. But how do you, I mean, you went through a situation in which the emotional shock was so much that you had to go, right, and isolate yourself for a moment to try to regulate yourself in the bathroom and crying. I mean, so that is also very intense. But in general, how? How have you managed to, or how have you created your own habits in the mental health department?
Well, look, it's complicated because sometimes mental health stuff can be very similar to physical health in the way that you don't always start taking care of it until you notice something is failing. People, for example, sometimes won't quit smoking until they see the first black spot on an x-ray. And sometimes singers don't really worry about our mental health until they get the first big shock in a situation. So, for example, when I was finishing my doctorate, I had a really tough situation related to one of my last recitals. That shook me so badly, so badly. That was the moment when I said, okay, I need therapy. That's when I actually started looking for help, to finally sit down with a professional to say, look, this, and all of this is happening to me right now. So sometimes that's exactly the issue. You sometimes don't take proper care of yourself until something happens. One thing that has definitely helped me a lot in terms of mental health, to keep a strong support network, having plenty of people such as my family, my friends, my partner. All of these people that I know will support me if I ever need help. Asking for help is one of the things I had to work on in therapy, and I think I'm still working on it. Um, because, but sometimes as a foreign singer, you come here and you say, I know if I came here, it's to fight my battles alone and to make it all work somehow. But we are human and we are part of a society. So eventually you will have to ask for help. So having a support network is something that has helped me a lot. Knowing that if something ever happens, I have a small list of people that I can tell them, please, I need to talk. I need you to listen to me. And these people have never let me down. Whenever it's within their possibilities, these people have supported me. Another thing that has helped me a lot with the mental health department is having hobbies. It's having a number of things that I know I like to do and that I can do them whenever I have some free time. Granted, sometimes free time is not always available. But the fact of having a project or a little something you can say, I want to make time for this one thing. Even if it is something as small as going to the gym, for example, or I actually love recording pop songs just for fun, or nowadays with TikTok, just uploading silly short videos once in a while. Hobbies are absolutely and completely wonderful for mental health, especially those hobbies that involve creativity or moving your body. In other words, dancing and going to the gym, sports, or any other type of creativity you can think of. All of this has definitely helped me a lot. And also the possibility of having conversations about mental health and bringing the topic to the table. Thank God I haven't needed any medication for my own mental health just yet. But as it happens, I know so many people who are currently in therapy and others who are on medication that if I had to do it, I don't think I would resist the idea. I wouldn't feel like the odd one out who has to take a pill to survive day to day because it's really something so common and a topic that can be discussed so calmly, or at least that happens to be the case here in the state of Oregon. The matter of not stigmatizing mental health is something so natural that it actually feels nice to know that if at some point you need to get an appointment with X or Y type of professional, or if you need to receive X or Y type of medication, there's not a stigma attached to it anymore. It's extremely common. So the thing with mental health, as I was saying before, is very different for each person. But I do think what helps a lot is definitely talking about it, having a support network, and taking care of yourself. As soon as you detect the slightest symptom of, I think things are getting out of control, or even before, there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeking therapy in a time when you feel fine. Nothing wrong. Sometimes there are things buried deep inside that you're not even aware of. And above all, it's important to take care of your mental health like you would your physical health. That's what I believe.
Now, sharply branching out from that very subject, I think, I believe that what you just said is absolutely vital nowadays. Currently, the consistent stress we live in, the stress that the environment induces us into, the stress from being constantly connected to social media, and the anxiety and many other patterns, I believe the situation is leading us to really need to seek, hopefully, at least most people with the resources to do so, to do exactly that, to seek therapy. And that, thankfully, our generation has somewhat normalized a bit more the idea of going to therapy. And there was something else you said that caught my attention, which is that it's true, there is still a lot of stigma focused around someone who needs medication. And there are people who simply, that medication has changed their lives for the better. How great. Just as you said it, that it is when we're in a stable moment of our lives to use that time to get into therapy and not just to, to put out wildfires.
No, 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 no. I really think it's one of the healthiest things in the world that a person can do. To seek a therapist during a time when you feel stable, because there can be really a lot buried inside that maybe you're not aware of. Now, for example, I continue to have therapy even though I'm not in any crisis right now, but each session I uncover a lot of things that I'm like, wow. Even, let's say, for example, there was one session in which we talked about empathy and mental health, about how as a teacher, I am constantly dealing with students who also have their own personal situations. And how sometimes when someone comes and tells you, yeah, look, this, and this is happening to me, and your first instinct, and I think it's a bit of a Costa Rican instinct, and sometimes is to say, look, I'll offer you all these solutions, I'll help you. But sometimes the person in question doesn't need you offering solutions. Sometimes all they need is a pair of ears, and there's more value in the connection of sitting down, listening, and sometimes saying, look, I don't have the answers to your problem, but I support you, I hear you, and everything will be okay. Which is not the same as to say, oh, but look, at least your situation is not that bad. Why don't you do this, and that? Sometimes advice is not what they need. Sometimes it's only about listening. And truly listening and connecting with someone has an immense value, immense value.
Now that you said that, from the perspective of us as teachers, this truly happens quite a lot. And it happens because, of course, singing is intrinsically sentimental in a good way. I'm not saying it pejoratively. Singing is emotional. It is all about emotional interpretation. So sometimes things happen. That as a teacher, and this is something I learned, and truly it was a hard thing for me to learn because I consider myself a very empathetic person. Very empathetic for better or worse. And so I learned that before, rather than immediately start saying, as you were mentioning, hey, I'll give you these solutions, it is best to ask, what do you need from me? Do you need advice? Or would you rather me to just listen to you? I had to make myself a mental tattoo of that question. And also for ethical reasons, right? For professionalism as a teacher. Now that you got your doctorate degree, and congratulations
Thank you, thank you.
for that big achievement, I want you to tell us what it's about. I mean, what is this doctorate degree related to vocal performance? Very briefly summarized, what is it? What is it about?
Well, let's see. I would say that perhaps the difference between a doctorate and other academic preparation is precisely diving deeper into the academic side of a discipline. So, for example, a master's in singing is very focused on this is how you sing opera, this is how you audition. Now get out and sing. The doctorate, on the other hand, is much more specific. The backbone of the doctorate is built on a series of seminars which are meant to greatly expand the academic perspective of the singer, for example, in historical performance practices, which is what I specialized in. They also expand your knowledge in subjects like musicology, music history, um, a bit also on the relationship between politics, society, and music. It's like diving a little in the aspects. No, not a little, but a lot. Very deeply into the more academic, scholarly, and scientific side of singing. So, in other words, it is like being a nerd, ha ha ha, and being given full permission to be a nerd, and being given all the tools to be a nerd in a specific instrument. In this case, the voice. So it fit me really nicely. I love the idea. It fit like a glove because I have always felt very passionate about this academic part, this side of things. As I tell you, I think it's a seed that was planted by Franklin Castro since back in 2013, which eventually translated into this. Franklin was always telling you, go read a biography of Bach. In the doctorate, it's no. You know what? Actually, go read these 5 biographies. And after that, make me a general report on this specific cantata. With these 5 different books, a single cantata. So it turns out it's pretty cool. Because if you're truly passionate about this scholarly side of your discipline, of your science, your art, then you have full permission and you have free reign to explore and study and and even contribute with more knowledge. Because in fact, the thing with the doctorate is that at the end of the doctorate, what you have to do is contribute to the state of the art, contribute to the existing knowledge, something that no one has contributed yet. And that contribution can be taking a little from everywhere and making my own conclusion or creating something completely new. It's very satisfying. And eventually it just turns you into a different kind of teacher altogether. It's so different. The way I used to teach singing before, back when I didn't have this amount of knowledge, is very different from the way I teach nowadays. And it gives you the opportunity to teach, not just how to use the voice. It gives you the opportunity to teach a much wider range of sciences and a much larger spectrum of skills. So, as I said before, it is one of many paths. It may not be a path that everyone will want to take, but if someone goes down that path and truly enjoys it, it's very satisfying, very, very, very.
Tell me now, what has been the most important point in your evolution? This is quite a word. Of your evolution as a singer, from the singer that was barely starting a bachelor's degree to the singer you are today.
I was talking the other day with another tenor. We were talking about some singing teachers we have had in the past. And he was telling me that he had a teacher in Seattle, that this teacher gave him a big bunch of technical tools that simply didn't help him, that this person simply put so many technical obstacles in him that he basically had to relearn his entire technique after studying with this one teacher. But right after, he told me something super interesting that opened my mind quite a lot. He said, I don't resent her. I cannot say that she was a bad teacher because she taught me what she knew. What she gave me was what she had to give. As a singing teacher, what's the difference? I started teaching in 2010. We're talking about 15 years ago. And I think the difference between what I offered back in 2010 and the way that I used to teach in 2010 to the way I teach now is precisely that now I have different things to offer. Um, the fact that I have lived different experiences, that I have faced different challenges, vocal, intellectual, artistic, ethical. It all makes many things that I used to say in one way in 2010, 2011, 2014. I now say things in a completely different way. And the only reason I say these things differently now is precisely because I've lived more. So I think that's the biggest evolution. Like my growth as an artist, as a singer, or as a professor of voice comes from the fact that I have lived more and I have faced more situations. And I'll have to keep evolving. I mean, I haven't yet reached a point where I can say, yes, yeah, I made it. Haha, no. I think that happens to all of us, Gio. I strongly believe that. The voice teacher you are today is a direct result of all the emotional, ethical, artistic, and intellectual experiences you've had in your life. And the voice teacher, opera singer, classical singer that you will be tomorrow will be completely different too. So, if there's something that I'm grateful for in life, it's precisely for letting me live more experiences, letting me face more challenges, letting me learn from them, and for letting me take some hard hits now and then, because those are the ones I have learned the most from. And for letting me have victories every now and then that I can celebrate and then keep moving on.